Well, let's talk about CM Punk for a second, because that also is news that CM Punk is close to a deal, or they've made a deal, it's under wraps, or whatever the case may be. Those are the rumors that are being reported. Again, as a matter of fact, that's probably the best move they could make, because there's been more mystery and more demand and more CM Punk, whatever, just to get him back in the business some way. As a matter of fact, once again, if certain NDA clauses were not signed at one point, he might have been the person that I would say you need to break your bank to get him and then build everything else around him at this point. That's what I would have said back then if I hadn't signed any NDAs. But the problem then begins again. CM Punk is a guy who said he didn't want to go back to the WWE because he didn't want to be another guy doing bad television. Well, does CM Punk believe that he is going to have the power, the pull, the cachet, the responsibility to take care of everything involving him and anybody he interacts with, so that it's not bad, stupid, counterproductive television? Again, for the same reasons you mentioned Daniel Bryan, he'll probably have it. It'll be a more friendlier backstage environment, a lesser schedule, work once a week, whatever the case. He can do anything else he wants, but he was already doing that to begin with. But how do you and here's the thing also, even if you're doing Shakespeare in segment 5 and 6, if you have the trained monkeys in seg 4 and the dancing bear in seg 8 on the same show, are you still not a person doing something good on a bad television program? So does that get into how have they been able to persuade CM Punk? How many zeros might have persuaded Punk to still be on a shitty show just with more control over what he actually does?
And again, we don't know what kind of potential deal he would have. Would it be a full-time contract? Or would it be more akin to a Brock Lesnar kind of deal where you pop in and out, which may actually be the best way to truly use your star power, but we don't know what his deal is and what or how much he'll be working there.
Honestly, that would be a better way to do it, is make him, as we talked about earlier in the show, an attraction. 4 big events a year and TVs to lead up to them. Maybe not that, depends on how it goes, but get the value for the enormous amount of money you're going to have to pay CM Punk out of the pay-per-views, because that's where you can generate income. As we mentioned, the program we're about to talk about here in a few minutes did 1.1 million people, which was up from 1 million people, which was up from 850,000 people, which was where they were when they were down from 1 million people. It's that range. And you can't tell me that adding even 100,000 people a week just because one guy is there is going to be possible on a regular basis. And I don't know if you'd make your money back on a deal of that size on television, but you certainly would on pay-per-view if you can protect. They're still the last one still doing pay-per-view. If you can protect Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and CM Punk and not make them less valuable than they are when you sign them by exposing them on your television, which is what's happened to so many other people, they can still make a ton of money on pay-per-view, especially right off the bat. But they're not cutting any. I think back to Kerry Silkin's words when I was it was WrestleMania weekend of 2010, because we went to Phoenix and had 2 shows in Phoenix. And that's when I just started the previous fall, and I was trying to, network contacts, whatever, try to make him some money or save him some money or whatever. And he's sitting there with everybody in his office, Adam Pearce and Sid and the merchandise weasel. And they told him he bought 42 plane tickets that weekend, because nobody lives anywhere near Phoenix, right? It's not close to anything. And he said, what the fuck is this? What am I running? Make-A-Wish? 42 fucking tickets. And that's when I had to sit him down and say, go over your talent roster. What do you pay them? Where do they live? How much do you have involved in their trance? Make your list and then come up with 10 guys that you could leave off, and it wouldn't the people wouldn't set the seats on fire, and it wouldn't drastically sabotage your wrestling show. And he did, and it saved him like fucking $4,000 per event. If not, I think it was more. And I said, then do that. So at some point, he's going to have to realize he's already had buyer's remorse, Tony Khan I'm talking about, on a lot of the outlaw friends that he signed to begin with, because we were hearing the stories in MLW and the summer of 2019. He was signing these outlaw guys that were getting nowhere near the amount of money that he was paying them for any other matches, any other promoter, anywhere. He's paying them like 3 and 4 and 5 times as much, signing them to contracts. Nobody even knew who the fuck they were. And several of those names that I heard were barely on television the first year. And all they've done is sign people and sign announcers and sign legends and sign, to the point where, remember, several weeks ago, I said, is Vince rope-a-doping this guy? Like, please spend as much money as you can to sign all these fucking people that I don't really want, so that you will fucking go broke on what you've got. And now if he's opening up his daddy's checkbook for Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, or another name that we haven't mentioned yet, Strong Broman?
Well, no. There's no rumors right now about him going to AEW. The rumor is that WWE may want to bring back Braun Strowman because of the fear that AEW could sign him and debut him.
Well, see, I think that rumor is mistake. If they let him go just a fucking month or 6 weeks ago, I would be, if I was Vince, going, yes, please give this big slug $2 million of your money. And you'll see what I ended up with, which was not much.
You know, the interesting thing, too, about Punk and Bryan Danielson, obviously Punk can use his name, Bryan Danielson, close enough, as close as you can get. They could probably both use their entrance music from WWE, because Bryan Danielson used Flight of the Bumblebee, and CM Punk used Cult of Personality by Living Colour. Tony Khan has no problem licensing music. They're going to come out there to the music they came out to on WWE TV.
Hey, did I tell you when whatever year it was that Punk did the pipe bomb promo and they were trying to sign him and bring him back so that Triple H could flatten him, kill his heat since he got over by himself? As soon as the contract negotiations were up in the air and everybody was buzzing, as soon as he came back out on their TV and they played Cult of Personality, I said, okay, this guy got everything from Vince McMahon he ever asked for. And Cliff, no brown M&Ms, he got that because Vince hates to license music. So that would, I can see that, and that would be a huge fucking pop. Punk coming out in a big building to that song could get a Cena-like pop like we were talking about that he got the other night.
You may have a babyface problem in the world of AEW, despite it being an old wrestling trope. But I would be intrigued down the road after you get through all this. I would be intrigued by CM Punk and Cody Rhodes in a feud. I don't know about the match, but the feud and the promos, I would be very interested in that. That would be good.
Cody would have to switch heel. Cody would have to be.
There's no way Punk could be a heel now, right? No way.
I don't think so, nor should he be.
What if he comes out there and starts doing the Jim Cornette promo, the Dan Lambert promo? I haven't been here because I think you are all a bunch of jerk-offs. The Young Bucks are ridiculous, and Kenny Omega's ridiculous, and I've taken Tony Khan's money, kind of like a pipe bomb promo. I've taken Tony Khan's money, and I'm coming here, and guess what? Now I'm an executive vice president.
Nope, that would not happen because the Bucks and Twinkle Toes wouldn't let it happen. And also, they had Dan Lambert, who's a guy they can make fun of, saying those things, and everybody could laugh. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But if CM Punk said those things, people would listen to it. And they would, even if they hadn't thought that, they would go, you know what? If Punk says it, yeah, I think they're kind of fucking, he's right. So they ain't going to be doing that.
If you are one of these guys that Tony Khan is talking to or has just signed about coming in and you're someone who's going to be getting six figures. You're someone who's a sizable wrestling star. You're someone who's going to certainly be lending a lot to AEW.
Now, you don't think Punk or Bryan is talking six figures now?
I wouldn't if I was them. No, you go right to seven figures.
Yes. Yeah. They're not six-figure guys.
And Punk already has a deal with Pro Wrestling Tee, so he could probably just keep all of his merch too. I would hope. Punk, negotiate that too.
Well, now, see, here's the thing. That's why I was saying you wouldn't want Punk to be a baby or to be a heel, not only because he's fresh and brand new, but because he would be selling shitloads of merchandise. You would want Cody to be a heel because he's jealous of this fucking tattooed up freak coming in here, interrupting his goddamn reality TV show.
But if you're
I could buy.
But if you're one of these guys of this stature coming in, do you say, hey, I want to be executive vice president too? I want health insurance.
Well, I think if I was one of those guys, I'd say, hey, I want health insurance, but I don't want, for a million years, I don't want to be one of your executive vice presidents. I just want the money and the insurance. And I don't think either one of those guys would want the headache that would come along with having to work with, in any official capacity, the other executive vice presidents or contribute to the overall success of the company in that respect rather than what they could do in the ring.
We've seen companies get hot for brief periods of time, like, look at the promotional war in Montreal in 72. Like, we've seen what happens. And I got to say, right now, AEW has the momentum. WWE is stature, but AEW has momentum. They're selling out this tennis stadium in New York. That's a big moment for them. They have a lot going on. Do you think this is the time to double down and just invest on as much talent as possible? And, I mean, if you see a star out there like that, do you grab him or do you even think about it?
Well, yes, you grab Daniel Bryan. You grab CM Punk. I'd leave Strong Broman alone. But they do have momentum, but it's the same thing as when they asked Shitstain. They said, well, what are you going to do when business goes down? Booking like this. He's, if we do it right, it'll never go down. It always goes down. Same thing. They're signing stars. They're signing names off the other television. This happened in the mid to late 90s, as you'll recall. And yes, as long as they can keep signing these new names and hot-shotting these themed television shows and hot-shotting the pay-per-views and blah, 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 especially with their audience, which loves hot-shotting because they love chaos, they're going to have momentum, but sooner or later, there's nobody left to sign. There's nobody new. You've hit the wall. You can't shoot any more angles. You can't set anybody else on fire. So no, the time when you've got this much momentum is to take who you've already got and fucking polish it up to be as good as it possibly can and go out and have all these shows with this giant array of talent already, instead of trying to collect a bunch of people, drop them all like a fucking cow pie in the road and see if anybody, who smells what. You can't get over 20 new guys all at the same time, even if people already know who they are. You can't feature them, even with these multiple TV shows, especially when they have these 20-minute matches that don't mean anything on their 2-hour television program. They really have a good selection of talent for a 2-hour program, but you don't see half of them because they put the wrong people on the show and they let them stay out there for half an hour. So, no, I wouldn't just go crazy and sign, because what happens when their momentum fucking peters out this fall when some other sport's having tournaments on fucking television, or there's no new shocking surprises to sign, or people have seen 85,000 exploding matches, and then they're like, oh shit, we still got to pay all these fucking guys. Deal with what you've got and get that in good shape first.
Let's not forget they have unlimited capital.
Well, sooner or later, Daddy might get upset. And then Daddy will say sell.